Hello, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to this new Gated Talent Premium webinar, The Road to Private Equity Careers. My name is Jan Lelejour and I represent Gated Talent here in London. So for today, for this Q&A session, I am joined by Nick Jolly, President and Managing Partner of retained search firm Hadley, Jolly and Associates, and by Roberta Packer, partner at the same firm. They're joining us from Savannah and Boston. So hi, Nick. Hi, Roberta. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Glad to be here.
So Nick, you have over 20 years experience as an executive search and business development consultant. Nick started his recruiting career in 1995 at Management Search of Rhode Island. And after years of hard work and dedication, he earned a membership in the prestigious Pinnacle Society, which recognizes the elite consultants in the US with a membership reserved for only 75 individuals. And in 2010, Nick started his own firm, Hadley, Jolly and Associates. And Roberta has also over a decade in executive search experience, managing diverse client relationships nationwide in the US. So we've received quite a few questions in advance of this webinar. However, please feel free to use the chat box on the side of your screen at any time to ask your questions during the live session. So before we start, Nick, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience working with PE firms? What kind of roles do you recruit for these firms?
So, Roberta and I have worked with PE firms probably the last 4 years, and we've placed probably over 40 individuals over the last couple of years with private equity firms. And we've gone all the way from the C-level positions down to the individual contributor, field service techs. We've learned that it's not the position, it's what the company needs that we help them with. So even though a Corn Ferry or restaurants wouldn't do a field service tech, if that's the critical need of an organization, that's what we're going to help them with. So, we are a firm that will help you with, will help any organization with any of their needs, usually after they've exhausted all their resources.
Okay, great. So
internal referrals, postings, whatever.
Fantastic. So we're going to start with all the questions that we received. So the first one is from Pedro. Pedro is saying he has 20 years of global experience in a small country. How can he get on the radar of private equity firms for international missions?
Well, it's very difficult, Pedro, to get in the PE world, especially if you're someone from a small country and you have to relocate or travel. But the bottom line to anything that you guys or you want to do is you've got to learn how to market yourself and look for when you're marketing yourself and looking for a new career opportunity, you've got to make sure that you've done the research that you need to do. And finding a position or finding a job is a job in itself. The process of finding a new job, whether you're employed or unemployed, causes a lot of anxiety, but it's also a lot of work. There's time, there's expense, there's preparation, there's implementation, there's follow-up. I mean, it's everything that you would have to do to be successful. And the first thing you have to look at, Pedro, is, are you, in beginning your search, do you first take in stock the realities? Are you looking at all the right places? Are you talking to all the right people? Are you sending your resume to the individuals that you need to be sending to? Are you sending them to the companies that would be interested in looking at your organization? But you got to keep in mind that sending out your information, your resume, your fact sheet about yourself, can infringe upon your confidentiality, especially if you don't know, where the final destination of the material is going. So, you've got to do your homework and your research when you are looking at any company, whether it's private equity or a small company, or how to get into the PE world, especially on the international side. So the things that you have to do to ensure the highest probability of success is, do your research, look at the market trends, look at the organizations that you want to go to work for. Are they privately held? Are they publicly held? What type of positions are they looking for? Find out what kind of services or directories that you can look at to help you with your search. But the bottom line is, you've got to work your network, because that's the greatest way to get into any organization is if you know someone that can recommend you for any role. But also look at alumni lists, anything again, associations, recruiting firms that specialize in certain industries. That's how you're going to get you're going to get on the radar of PE firms on the international side. Roberta, you want to add anything to that?
I think that's an excellent response, and also I would just add global experience is, I would think, a key criteria for any person entering the private equity world. To enter into, beyond your country, I think the first step is regional positions, because oftentimes that is needed. Languages and cultural experience are needed. I find that private equity firms are very reluctant to pay relocation expenses when they can find someone who is within the region, who can travel within the region.
Okay, thank you.
Roberta brought up a great point. Cost. Private equity firms are very, very
all about cost.
It's about cost, and it's not about spending money. It's about saving money and making money, because the PE world, when they buy companies or they look at companies, they're looking at exit strategies. Even though they're buying a company right now, they're saying, hey, 5 years we're looking at our exit strategy. It's how much money can they make, how attractive can they look to investors or to buyers, and again, so they're going to try to keep their costs as low as possible.
Right, and so they're very reluctant to enter into expat type relationships.
Great. Thank you very much for your answers. The following question is from Rosario, and he asks, how can you sell your skills to a private equity employer, and what exactly do they look for in a skill set?
It's kind of a broad question, Rosario, because private equity firms aren't any different from any other firms or companies, whether they're public or private. They're looking for someone who not just meets the expectation, but exceeds their expectations. Everyone looks good on LinkedIn. Everyone looks good on Gated Talent. Everyone looks good on paper, your resume. It's what makes you different, or what you have done that differentiates you from everybody else. I mean, the bottom line, when you look at a position description, or if you look at a company and they have an opening, there's usually 10 or 15 key requirements or qualifications that they're looking for. But if you broke it down to percentages, the first 5% of what of the responsibilities is what they're going to be doing that 75% of the time. So that's how you've got to sell your skills. I mean, if they give you 15 requirements or responsibilities, the first 5 are going to be 75% of what this individual does. So that's what you really got to concentrate on. If you're trying to sell your skills to an organization that it doesn't have an opening, but you just want to make an introduction, again, a resume tells them what you've done. A cover letter tells them who you are. So it's not just meeting their expectations, but are you a good fit for the organization? So you've got to talk about what you've done, how it benefited the company, growth, whatever it is. That's how you're going to get them to look at your skill set. Roberta?
Definitely. I think that the most important thing is demonstrating a proven track record of results. They're looking for results. They're looking for someone who can be both strategic and who can execute and get the results. So in private equity firms, they try to have less layers of bureaucracy and decision making. They want someone who can be very hands-on, who can come up with the strategy, who can prioritize of what needs to be done to dramatically move that needle, to really add value to the business, to create that cultural transformation that they're looking for, and someone who is very resilient in overcoming obstacles and resistance, and who can be resourceful, to drive the ship. So those are the skills primarily that you're looking for, is How have you accelerated growth, both top line growth and bottom line growth?
Okay, we just received a live question, so I'll go to that one before we carry on with the pre-received questions. We have Karen who is asking, how do you approach the private equity industry when you don't have classic finance background as CFO or chartered accountant? How do you demonstrate financial acumen, and how do you break into what is a pretty closed industry?
Well, private equity firms are going to usually hire individuals who exceed their expectations. They don't have the luxury of training anyone for a role. So they'll hire above what they're looking for because, again, they always have a 2, 3, 4, 5-year escape plan or get out plan. And they're looking at that individual who has been there, done that. So if you're looking to get into the private equity world and, as a junior individual, anything's possible, but they tend to overhire for what they're hiring for. Overqualified and willing to take a step back because this individual that they're hiring has to understand the vision of where they want to get to. On the finance world, finances are the most important thing for a PE firm because they're dealing with, their creditors. They've got to make sure that their I's are dotted, their T's are crossed, and they're not a penny off. So, again, they tend to overhire for every role because, again, they have the long-term vision in view versus the short-term. And I think we're kind of going through that right now with a company, who's looking for a controller, and they have someone that could fill the role, but how's that person going to be 2 or 3 years down the line when they want to sell? So again, I think they're thinking, most PE firms think long-term versus short-term. They don't have the luxury of training somebody to do the job. They need someone who's been there, done that. And I think Roberta would agree on that.
Absolutely, and I think also, if there's a distinguishing factor here of if you're looking at, more of the platforms or the holding companies versus the portfolio companies, and which are two entirely different things. And initially, the object is to break into the portfolio company. It doesn't matter if you're a CFO or a chartered accountant. You do need to be able to demonstrate that you have industry experience and that you have ability to consolidate the numbers, that you have ability to be that strategic business partner to the managing director, and that it's ideal that as these private equity firms continue to add on or bolt on acquisitions, that you have experience in integrating those acquisitions as well.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, we can go back to the list of questions now. So the next one is from Anupam. How can I leverage my professional experience in combination with an executive MBA to work with or for a PE firm?
Well, the bottom line, it comes in with your professional experience. I mean, all PE firms want to hire intelligent people, and not shooting you down, but there are a lot of people with executive MBAs who would walk across the street and in front of a bus. So they're looking for what you've done in your past that could help them, grow for the future. An executive MBA is going to help you. It's definitely not going to hurt you, but they're looking for experience. That for experience from individuals who's been there, done that, and can help them grow. Degrees will never hurt you; they can only help you. But that, I don't think with PE firms, that's a major requirement that you have an executive MBA.
Okay.
And as a part of that, I mean, the education is definitely important. I mean, they always look at highly educated people. But the other aspect is, where have you worked? Do you have a great pedigree in the places where you've worked, where you've learned world-class or gold standard operations, and you've learned that experience that you can translate to business transformation.
Fantastic. After this, we have now David, who is asking, how is compensation typically structured for different types of private equity roles?
David, every private equity holding company has different structures for their, I'll say, employees. But usually the C-level individuals are going to get some type of shares within the organization. They're called points. I don't know how. I know how the ones that we work deal with it. So there's not one answer for that. But usually at a executive level role, you're going to get some type of points within the organization, and it depends how big the organization is. Depends what role you're in. I do know that when you go into the PE world on the executive side, they're going to ask you to take a haircut because they are a pay for performance type of group. If they're successful, you'll be successful. If they fail, you fail. But the bottom line is this: there's no one specific answer for that question because everything is structured differently. And I think everything is negotiable with executives within any organization.
And it also depends upon, again, like you're exactly right, Nick. Of it, if you're entering in at the holding company level, at the platform level, you will more than likely receive some sort of equity. But if it's at the portfolio company level, oftentimes they're small to medium-sized enterprises where if you're coming from a big multinational global corporation, you may be actually earning more. But the thing is, it's difficult to break into the private equity world. So if someone's willing to give you a chance, oftentimes they do. They're like, okay, here's your chance to prove what you're worth, but it is less money that you might be earning right now, but it's as like taking 2 steps back for a long-term future, because once you prove yourself in the private equity world, multiple doors open up. No one wants to be the first, but once you prove yourself, then you're getting a lot of phone calls for other opportunities.
And David, the other thing I'll add to this is, these private equity firms, they pay for performance. They're heavily incentivized on bonuses.
On
but
the variables.
You've got to realize that, and the variables. And when these companies buy, these companies and they package them together and they sell, sometimes the management goes with them and sometimes they don't. But usually the holding company, will repeat this process, start a whole new program, and they'd rather have someone who's proven who's been there and done that with them than work with a firm like ours who has to go out and find them somebody new. They'd rather save the money also. So they tend to reward individuals for doing a great job. And again, they're heavily compensated on the bonus side because that's what they need to do. I mean, you rewarded for your success and the success that you bring to an organization.
Right. And as an addendum to that, we have definitely seen the decisions moving that needle far more than what they expected when we initially started a search, based upon what someone brings to the table. And again, going back to what we said before, it's that long-term view. It's not just thinking right now, it's thinking 3 to 5 years down the road. What does this person bring to us? How can we leverage this person as we continue to grow? So oftentimes, if you can demonstrate that of what you bring to the table, that compensation level of what they're willing to pay goes up.
I mean,
Thanks.
everyone likes to get in the PE world because they think that's the what is it, the gold behind the rainbow, whatever you call it. Yeah, and most people don't realize that only 30%, I think I just read yesterday, only 30 to 40% of PE firms when they sell actually make money, which that's not a great, well, I guess it is a great hit rate, but I mean, if you're going there thinking that you're going to make a lot of money, when they sell, unless you're very, very successful, and we've placed presidents who, have gone through this, and, they're expecting a $3 million payout and got $50,000. So again, go for all the right reasons. When you make a job change or for anything, whether it's in the private equity world or the public sector, make sure you're making that move for all the right reasons. Challenge, advancement, stability, income, recognition, location. Because if you're strictly doing it for financial reasons, it's probably not the right role for you. So take everything in consideration. How is this position going to help me in the future? And with growth, with advancement, you're going to make more money, but the bottom line is it going to help you?
And how do you interact? I mean, that key relationship with the team, with who you report to, is crucial. Of how is that relationship going to be able to advance your career? So it's not all about short-term gain and compensation, for sure.
Right. And any company, and even the private equity world, they're going to make you a fair offer. They'll make you a fair offer. If they truly want you on board, they'll make you a fair offer. And that might not be what you want, but they'll make you a fair offer because they should be able to sell you on the opportunity. And I think that should be the most important thing when you get in the PE world is, what is the opportunity? What if they sell in 5 years? Do I have the skills I need to go do this again or in a different role? But the bottom line is this. Compensation is structured differently for every individual. And so look at the big picture.
Okay, great. We're going to go to our live audience now. We received a few questions, and we have a couple questions about the operating partner side of things. So we have Sumesh asking, could you elaborate on the operating partner roles in the US and EU? And Jay is asking, could you please explain the role and profile of the operating partner or liaison working between the PE company and a portfolio company?
Roberta, you want to do this, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead. I know that the operating partner must be first and foremost that bridge between investors and the portfolio companies. So once the deal is made, the operating partner doesn't necessarily come into that planning of which companies should be acquired. But once they are acquired, the role of the operating partner is to make the investors happy and to also accelerate growth and add value in the portfolio companies by improving operations, by implementing lean, by really focusing on working capital, on inventory, all of those KPIs and metrics that are important to again increase revenue on the top line, but also increase the profit margins on the bottom line. So the operating partner has to be very strategic, has to be very hands-on, has to have a proven track record of results and execution of improving operations to accelerate growth. That's the key. You have to be able to add value. Once they acquire the company, it has to get better.
And like Roberta said, they don't get involved on the due diligence side of the acquisition. Mm-hmm. They are involved only once the company is acquired. So it's integration, making that integration as smooth as possible and starting to get a return on their investment.
Right.
So it's like Roberta said, it's implementing lean, it's KPIs, downside, whatever it is. But they're the person that's going to be that individual who works with the managing partners or the CEO and with the individual GMs of the business units themselves.
And the entire team of the individual business units. And it's critically important that operating partner understands cultural transformation. A lot of these companies that are acquired do not have the knowledge or the culture of what world-class operations means. They oftentimes have come from a founder-led company that just doesn't have that expertise. You need to be able to be a leader and to create followership, because the last thing that they want is someone to come in heavy-handed or dictatorial and to ostracize or demoralize the team. Most of the people they want to keep on board, there may be some top grading involved, but most of the people they need to keep on board for that historical knowledge. So you need to be able to create followership, create daily management tools, create KPIs and metrics, be able to coach and mentor, these teams, that this is a whole new world for them. And, of course, with change comes that resistance, to be able to overcome that resistance, to be able to show the vision, to be able to get some quick wins and demonstrate that your strategy works. That is incredibly important, and not everyone has that ability to create that followership of, okay, I get how all these changes are important, and we're going to do that, and we're going to move that needle. I think that those personal skills are of the utmost essence for an operating partner.
Okay, so
100%. I just want to add this. I mean, the greatest skill anyone can have is the ability to communicate with individuals, whether they are a line worker or a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization. And people are open to change if they know why. And this individual has to explain why they're doing things and how it benefits them or the company. So it comes down to your communication skills. Again, you've got to be able to talk to the janitor and with the CEO, have the same exact conversation and engage them both. Everyone likes to know why.
Right, and the operating partner is pretty much the burden of accountability falls on their shoulders. So you have to be able to demonstrate that you're going to convert all of the potential that the partners saw in the due diligence when they were vetting the company. They see that potential. You now have to convert that potential to reality. You're the one who becomes accountable to get to the finish line and has added a lot of value in the exit.
So we have a follow-up question from Sumesh. Does that mean that operating partners are compensated differently than the fund professionals?
It's not. So you're probably working for the operating platform.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be a member of the operating platform. You're not going to be a member of. You're not going to be employed.
You're not going to be a principal of the PE firm. The principals of the PE firm are compensated entirely differently.
Exactly. This person will probably be heavily incentivized on bonus. They might get a half point or quarter point. It just depends on how much money the PE is willing to give out.
And it's at what stage the PE firm is
exactly.
in.
I mean, they might be 2 years. Exactly. They might be 2 years away from
so you're going to get less equity, correct? But if you're in the very beginning, there's more incentive to give more equity. It depends on what stage of growth they're in.
The worst thing someone can do is go in and demand equity. You've got to ask, what their extra. You've got to understand again the PE firm and where they're at, just not in personnel, but you could always ask for equity. Now, whether or not they give it to you, I don't know. But I know in this role, they're heavily incentivized on getting it done. And if you get it done, we're going to reward you bonus-wise. I don't know if there's, with the position we're doing right now, we kind of got that role. There will be a little bit of equity in the operating partner, but I mean, the person is not going to be able to retire.
Okay. So we're going to carry on with the live questions because we have some interesting questions coming in. Michael is asking if there are any financial research tools that he should be familiar with that will help him move into PE, for instance, Bloomberg, etc. Is there anything you would recommend him?
Well, on the finance side with private equity firms, they've want when they hire individuals. I mean, they hire at the corporate level, at the platform level. If they're looking for a CFO, they're looking for someone who's been in the private equity world, has hopefully gone through an exit or a sell, but has definitely worked with creditors. That is the key in the private. Have you worked with creditors, because that's their most important relationship. Are they keeping the creditors happy? And it's about making sure that your books are accurate for every business division or your division, but making sure that you have everything done. Are there tools out there that you could use? Yes, they are. But the bottom line is they're looking for someone who's been there, done that. And when I say
in the same industry,
exactly.
In the same industry, because it doesn't cross pollinate. They want specific experience in the same industry where it correlates, and they want to see, have you been a part of a successful sell? And the other thing is, how much, have you been involved in, the due diligence for M&As, but have you been a part of a successful sell? What's your track record?
Exactly.
Now, if you're going for a portfolio company, that's a different thing altogether.
Exactly. But the bottom line is this. Anybody in finance in the private equity world has to be very, very hands-on.
Yep.
You don't have the resources of a major corporation where there's 10 cost accountants, a senior accountant. I mean, this individual has to be able to really take the bull by the horns and be willing to sit down and go over the books themselves and make sure they're accurate. Again, a lot of these private equity firms are not big companies. They're buying $2 million, $20 million companies. They don't have the resources that you would at we'll say a Thermo Fisher Scientific or a Danaher or something like that. So again, you've got to have those hands-on skills.
And they don't have the top of the line. I mean, they have very basic accounting systems, ERP systems. They don't have a lot of the financial tools that a lot of the bigger corporations have. So you have to be able to deal with that of, more of the foundational, smaller company ERP systems.
If there are resources out there that name private equity firms and what they do and the size of companies they buy. So if you're doing your research, you should know that, and you should know the type of companies they buy. If they're buying small mom and pop organizations that are profitable in spite of themselves, they've been around for 30 years, but they do the same exact thing they did 30 years ago. That you got to be hands-on, and that you're not going to have the resources that you do at the big company to help you out. So again, it's have you been there? Have you done that? Are you hands-on? And do they feel comfortable? Industry experience, and do they feel comfortable that you can have an intelligent conversation with the creditors? Because this is the individual who will have to give the presentations. And to be honest with you, it's probably the most important partner of the CEO of a private equity firm, because they are the ones that have to sit down with the creditors and with the board to ask for money, to ask for whatever. So this is probably the number 2 position besides the CEO of any private equity firm.
Okay, so now Anthony is asking a question about the portfolio companies. So would PE firms hire execs for their portfolio companies outside of the industry the portfolio company is in, especially when the role is a commercial, general management, sales, business development type of opportunity?
So, when companies are looking at, are we talking, what type of role are we looking at?
In the portfolio company, if it's like, for the general manager or managing director or global sales director.
Exactly.
So there are usually 2 roles when you go for a general manager or a managing director type of role. You either want someone with operation experience or commercial experience. because that's how they're going to grow. They're going to grow through, save money through operations and continue to grow through mergers and acquisitions, or they can grow, or if they're well set up and everything's running well, they probably want to grow through sales. So there's two roles there. They tend to hire people with industry knowledge because, again, they don't have the luxury of training someone to fit into the role.
And they don't have the ramp up time for someone to learn the ropes. I mean, so I would say 99.9% of the time, they demand industry knowledge.
Exactly.
We haven't been able to get anyone hired without industry knowledge. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I was just saying it's very difficult to change industries in the PE world because they're looking for someone who's been there, done that, and knows what they do. So, is it possible? It is. We haven't been successful doing it because the first question that we always ask, after we take a search is, are there certain industries that you want us to recruit from? And it's always, the first three the first one is, of course, their industry. The second one would be maybe a supplier or someone that supplies equipment to them, and the third would be, just whatever.
Perhaps distributor knowledge.
Exactly. So you can do it, but it's very, very difficult.
Great. So next, David is asking, what kind of challenges do you see with private equity exits, and what questions would you ask a PE firm during a job interview?
So we haven't gone through an exit yet. We're working with a firm that's probably about a couple of years away from doing it. So I can't answer that question for you. We have recruited individuals who have gone through exits. Most of them have, one of them was a VP of sales and marketing. That was a very successful exit. One was a general manager of a small company. That was not a pleasant exit. That's the one that was guaranteed a lot of money and they're getting $50,000, and the other individual ended up with a couple million. So I can't answer that question. The only thing I know is we've dealt with individuals who have, and they want to stay in the PE world. So it couldn't have been that bad.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Zishan. What is the career risk to you if your PE firm does not do well or is shut down? As said earlier, PE portfolio companies generally tend to be relatively smaller companies. So does failure on this platform pose significant career-related risks?
There's a risk in anything that you do. There's a risk in any position that you take. If we had crystal balls, none of us would be sitting here to listen to me or Roberta talk. We can't predict the future. So the risk is this: you don't do your job, you're not going to have a job. If you do your job and you do it well, you'll always have a job. If the company stays whole. If they go away and they go out of business, well, then you're like everybody else. You're looking for another position. We can't predict the future, and that's the only thing I'll say. But if you have an opportunity and you get that opportunity, do your best, no matter what it is. Because if you do your best, you can't give any more. But your goal in the private equity firm is to do your best so you can help the organization grow, because it's all about growth.
And I think, just to add, there are basically two different MOs for private equity companies. Some of them purposely look for companies that are struggling, that they're not performing well, so if they acquire them, they can repackage them financially and then just sell them off. Or transfer all of their IP and platform technology to another company and then shut them down. But they're looking for a very short-term return on investment. There are other private equity companies where the MO is, we're looking for companies that aren't struggling, that they are profitable, that there is a platform technology that is needed in the marketplace. So those are some of that's some of the homework that you need to do. Where's the market potential? How much is their market share? Is there potential for growth in market share? What is the potential for opening up new channels or new product lines to address some of the trending issues in the industry. So you have to do competitive intelligence. And then, they are profitable. And so the whole goal of acquiring them is we're going to grow this company. We're not going to just repackage it financially and sell it off for a return on our money. We are going to invest the time and the expertise in growing it. So those companies are not going to, they're not going to just go out of business. They bought them, they vetted them for a reason. They're adding value, and altogether, all the portfolio companies add a lot of value for the eventual acquirer down the road in exit.
Okay, on to the next question. What differences would you perceive between working for a PE-backed company versus a VC-backed company? That's from Martin.
Roberta, you want to do that one?
So I personally haven't worked with VC-backed companies, only private equity companies. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. I've been an executive recruiter for 15 years. When I first started out, I did work with biotech and medical device companies. So, some of those were startups that were VC-backed or had angel investors. Very, very, very different. It's an entirely different beast because VC-backed oftentimes, at least in my experience, and again, I don't have a lot of it, is if VC-backed oftentimes will go with startup companies. Private equity tends to go with the more reliable of what have they done, what's their brand name, is it an established, is it a good investment? They don't typically go with the startup investments. What would you
Correct.
say, Nick?
And I would say the same thing. VC capital firms are focused on startups. They're looking at intellectual property. Can they take something to market? So
Right.
they are taking a huge risk where the PE firms are usually buying established companies with a product line already out there. They're looking at companies that have that are successful, but if run correctly, they could be more successful. Or if they're losing money, they look at these firms and say, just imagine if we took control of this and implemented lean or an ERP system or whatever, we could make them profitable. So your VC firms are looking for more of the startup. They're buying intellectual property or patents, where the PE firms are looking more at established companies.
And oftentimes the VC firms they're looking, can we take this public?
Exactly.
And the IPOs and private equity, that's not what they do.
Okay, next we have a question from Craig in the UK. Craig has a very strong CV as a global tech-based finance director in the UK. However, he's not on the radar of the PE houses or of recruitment firms, and he's asking, are there any networking groups that would help with the initial contact? So I don't know if you can answer that one.
So, there are recruiting firms out there that specialize in finance. I'm sure you can find search firms or recruiting firms that specialize working in just looking for, that just work in the PE world. Who they are, I don't know. But I would look at, the Pinnacle Society. Again, there's individuals who specialize in accounting and finance. I believe some of them do work in the PE world. But it's about networking and talking to the right individual. I mean, don't send your resume to a bunch of recruiters and saying, hey, this is who I am. Can you help me find a job? That's not what some recruiters do. Find jobs for individuals.
Great, thank you. Yeah, go on.
Now, retained search firms work on behalf of a company. So, they're looking for specific individuals or to fill specific positions, but they don't tend to find people jobs.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, Jay is asking, what is the typical allocation of equity percentage given to the portfolio company leadership team?
can't answer that. It changes for every individual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's
and
not a specific.
how early on? I mean, again, how
Exactly.
early the platform is. Oftentimes, equity will be handed out to some of those individuals in the very, very beginning stages, but once they're closer to exit, they won't.
Okay.
So there's not a specific answer is what we're trying to tell you.
Right.
I mean, it changes
Sure.
for every role, and depends on when you get in.
Okay. Navid is asking, having a long IT career in large financial organizations, I want to pursue a career in PE. I am very good at restructuring, cost management, strategy, etc. Are there careers for me in private equity?
There's careers for anybody in private equity if you can bring value to the organization. So you've got to market yourself as someone who was very hands-on, that could bring a good return on investment for yourself or for the organization. It's difficult, to get into the PE world is difficult. You got to differentiate yourself from everybody else. So the question is, how are you different? What can you bring to the table? When PE firms look at individuals that work for large companies, they understand that they have all the resources at their disposal to help them with their job. With the PE world, you don't have those resources. So again, if you've worked for large organizations, you better tell them why you're a good fit for the organization and how you can help them. But the key is, again, can you do the job? Are you hands-on? And not just for that position, but can you help out in other ways?
Right. I think those being a part of restructuring and specifically of a lot of these companies that are acquired, they just don't have the sophistication that they need to have to continue to get to that next plateau of growth. So if you have been a part of, building and creating from like almost ground zero of systems and processes and procedures and really being able to implement those systems that's going to get these companies to be able to get to that next plateau, that is a valuable skill set, because a lot of people in big global corporations, the systems are already built. They may be improved, but they're already built, and there's the structure there, there's the foundation there. A lot of these you would need to be able to demonstrate. I personally have had hands-on experience in creating these systems from ground zero to create that foundation for the company to grow.
And this is for everyone. This is for everybody out there. Before we go to the next question, whatever role you're looking at, whether it's a managing director, a CFO, a director of accounting, whatever it is, do your research. Look at position descriptions that companies write for individuals, for certain positions. So look at the first 5 responsibilities and think about how your background matches up to what they're looking for, because they're going to be pretty similar. And write an assessment or answer that question in detail of how your background matches up to their expectations. Tell me, from my research, I found that a managing director's responsibilities are whatever. Let me tell you how my background matches up to that. Again, separate yourself from everybody else. Everyone looks good on paper, but explain why you're that right candidate or that person they should have a conversation with. Again, the cover letter, your resume tells them what you've done. Your cover letter tells them who you are, but get into specifics of what you've done and how you did it. That is the key. That's going to get you in front. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. But specifically on how to highlight yourself, you have to be able to, first and foremost, really use specifics, your specific individual impact. Not just, everyone's a part of a team.
Not my
and it's
team.
important to be a team.
Yeah, not my team.
Not my team. This is what we as an entire division or group or team did. It's exactly what individual impact did you have? What part did you play in the decision making? What part, what are the metrics? What was be able to lay out specifically a case study? This is what the situation was. This is the way we analyzed it. This is what we decided to do, and I was a part of that decision making. I had a seat at the table in that decision making, and then these are the results. This is the time frame, and then be able to do that SWOT analysis. And in hindsight, this is perhaps what we would have done differently. But you have to be able to show metrics. You have to show specific numbers. You have to be able to show specific results beforehand and afterwards. What did that decision accomplish? What was your role in getting those results? That's the most important. That's what they're looking for. They want that business acumen, put out a case study, a business case, why you deserve this opportunity.
And that's going to separate you from everybody else, because not only does it tell them what you did, but it also gives them an idea of your communication skills, both written, which is very, very important, to be honest with you. So,
and
again,
your analytical skills and your business. How do you make decisions? It shows how do you make decisions. That's what they want to see.
I mean, your ultimate goal is, of course, to get hired for the position you're applying for. But the bottom line is this: you're not going to get hired if they don't interview you. So your first step is getting that interview. And again, you've got to differentiate yourself from everybody else. Tell them why they should talk to you. And I will tell you this: we have actually placed individuals at firms where there wasn't an opening, but as we talked with this individual, we said, "Wow, they're bringing a lot to the table, and they would be a good fit for this company." You might not, and even though they don't have an opening, and we've actually managed to get them placed there. So again, they're going most PE firms will, everyone read Jack Welch's book where you get rid of the bottom 20% every single year and you keep the top 80%. Well, if they have an opportunity to top grade and that person's going to bring more value, they'll want to talk to you.
And
you just have to give
to
them a reason
add on,
why
I
to
think
talk
the
to you.
reason and what we saw in those individuals that we got placed, I would think there's some like key attributes there. Is that, which are characteristics or personality characteristics, not just experience. They were very proactive. They, they displayed initiative. They came up with new ideas and showed initiative. They were very driven of, I'm going to drive the show and I can do it and I'm going to lead this organization or team to success. They were very entrepreneurial in that or entrepreneurial minded, and they had that spirit of, I'm going to treat this like it's my own baby, and with that passion and drive, and I'm going to be resourceful and independent and not wait back, to wait for layers of decision making to happen. I'm going to create the idea. I'm going to propose it, and then I'm going to create that business case. I have that business acumen of why we should do this and get people on board. That's what they're looking for.
Great. So Sumesh is asking, what would you suggest to MBB alumni, so McKinsey, BCG, and Bain, to break into PE?
You got to work your network. I mean, the bottom line is this: the best reference you can get is from somebody who knows you, that's in the industry. So that would be my first step. Who do you know that's in this world? Because people are only going to help you if you ask for help. They're not going to volunteer. So the first thing I do is work your network. That would be my first step.
Okay, and following question is, how likely is it for someone without a US work permit to break into a US PE firm? Do they provide sponsorships for work permits?
I would say it's going to be very, very difficult. unless you have
However,
a
a lot of U.S. PE firms acquire companies in other countries, so within that country, wherever you're at, there are definitely opportunities. I would say the past 3 years I've done more international work than I have done, U.S. work.
I think the question was, how do you get to a foreign country into the U.S.? Was that what? Can you repeat the question?
How do you get into a U.S. PE firm?
Oh, yeah. Well, most of these PE firms are buying companies, outside the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was the question because Sumesh wanted to know if they would sponsor someone to go and work for a U.S. firm, for instance.
I would say probably not. And again, it's the same thing. Is they're not going to sponsor. They're not going to do expats. It's too expensive. They're going to look for someone who's already local and available. And a lot of PE firms are very open to remote type work relationships where you don't even have to go into the office every day. You could be in a different location because there's so much travel involved anyways in a lot of these roles.
It just depends what the role is, but yeah, right. a lot of these PE firms are buying companies overseas, and again, that's the research that you have to look at and say, what are the firms that specialize what PE firms specialize in my industry, where are they located, what type of companies they're buying, and where they're buying them from. But to relocate someone or to sponsor them, it's just too expensive. That's money that they'll never get back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's all about the return on investment. They're thinking, that 5-year plan on, if it costs us $50,000 to relocate this person, we can't find somebody here and maybe offer them $25,000 more to take the position. So it's difficult. It's difficult.
And next we have Karen, who I think we asked the question before, but I'm not sure if it was fully addressed actually at the time, because she asked 2 questions earlier. How do you break into what is a pretty closed industry? I think she refers to PE actually, but any thoughts on that?
Again, to get in the PE world, I mean, everyone, if you go back in the 90s, everyone wanted to get in the startups, the software startup and all that, and everyone had an idea. The bottom line, Karen, is this: you've got to do your research, and you got to look at the companies or the PE firms that are in your industry. Look at the companies they're buying. Look at if they're growing, where they are at the stage of their growth. There's no correct answer for that. It's just doing your homework, and if there's not a need at an organization, create one for yourself. Make yourself that individual where they should hire you, or at least talk to you, so you can explain to them why they should be interested in speaking with you. I mean, a lot of positions are created because this person can bring a lot more value, or they're going to top grade. So it's not easy. It's a job in itself to get a job in the PE world. And that's why it's very difficult. But if you're going to do it, put your steps out there. What do I have to do to get in this world? And again, it's labor intensive. You got to be realistic in what you want, your salary requirements, your location. You got to look at the firms that do business in your world, the search firms that they work with. Anytime you can get in by yourself, get in by yourself. If you don't have to work with a recruiter, don't work with a recruiter. Don't rely on somebody else for your success, because they're not going to give you 100% where you can give 100%.
Thank you. And I think we have just enough time for one final question. Val is asking, after building a career at publicly traded firms, what are the key transferable skills that are desirable in the PE sector?
Well, we've talked about this. It's if you work for a large firm, what kind of world-class skills can you bring to these PE firms? Are you hands-on? I mean, the bottom line is this: you've got to be able to market yourself where you are probably a little bit more than what they need, but that's going to help them in the long run. It's, are you hands-on? What have you done? Your KPIs, your metrics, be able to talk about that. But the bottom line is this: you've got to be able to talk about what you have done yourself and how it affected the big company that you're at. Because it all comes down to what have you done, what did you do, how did it affect the company.
What are your references going to say?
And that's my last thing I was going to bring up is don't have your references in advance, or have them already give you a reference and send them in. Because again, especially if they're a player in your industry, but don't be reactive, be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the key.
I agree. I think that is the key, and I think the more, because you need to be hands-on in a lot of these positions, the more well-rounded you are in your experience, the breadth of experience that you have done in your career, to put it all together is going to give you an edge, rather than that very specific narrow vertical climb up the ladder. If you have that breadth of experience across different functional areas or different operations, that's going to be very important. If you have had experience in integrations of acquisitions, that's very important. Industry experience is critical. Again, can you demonstrate that you are a good decision maker in prioritizing what needs to be done first, and are you able to be fast paced, because they're very fast paced. It's not, oh, well, let me figure this out and then next year I'll do this. It's, you have to hit the ground running, and you got to make improvements right off, basically right off the bat. So, are you fast paced? Are you a cultural fit in this type of world where big global organizations are a little bit slower?
So put a checklist together for your personal accomplishments. I mean, exactly what did you do? What role did you play? What were the results? Give specific dollar amounts or percentages, and what were the benefits to the organization relevant to your accomplishments?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'm going to, we'll end with this is, be proactive in your search, but don't waste your time with individuals who can't help you. Anytime you can talk to the decision maker, if you send your resume to a PE firm, send it to the person who's a decision maker. If you're going to talk to a recruiter who understands your industry and has worked with the PE world. But
Fantastic.
Don't rely on anybody else. But don't rely on anyone else for your success. You've got to do this on your own. If you ask for help, you'll receive it. If you don't ask for it, no one will volunteer it.
And just to add one more thing, we haven't mentioned this at all. Rapport is essential in any relationship. So you have to be able to create that connection with the hiring manager, with the team. You have to be able to have that personality and energy and enthusiasm and rapport, and you can connect and listen and have that business discussion. That is so important. We've seen so many people who have everything on paper that they're looking for, but in person, they just cannot connect and just don't have the rapport, and someone doesn't want to work with them. So you have to be able to generate that.
Okay, well, thank you.
To end this conversation, this is what I'll say. If you get an opportunity to talk to a PE firm on an interview, if you reach out to me, I'll help you prep for it. I don't want to talk to you about what to do. I don't want to talk to you every hour. But if you seriously have an interview and you think you need some help, we'll offer that service to you.
Very kind of you, Nick. So thank you very much, Nick and Roberta, for sharing your vast knowledge of the PE world with our members. I'm sure they found it very useful. So we're going to end this session here. For attendees today, we have more upcoming premium webinars. So if you're a premium member of Getty Talent, you can access sessions on diversity, on global recruitment, and how to prepare for a C-suite interview coming up soon. You just have to log into your account to register. And Nick and Roberta, thanks again for attending, for joining us today. And goodbye, everybody. That's the end of this webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.